Welcome back to Speed Demon Painting, where today we are taking a look at the Union Order of Battle, or ORBAT for short. The first thing we do when we're having one of these deep dives is taking a look at all of the special rules that you can find for the Union or any faction that we are looking at, and let's do this for the Union. The first special thing that they have is Akron Observers. Now those are the little rotor drone-like looking things that you can get in the frontline squadron, and they essentially act as escorts, pretty much as described on page 32 of the rulebook, although they are noticeable in a couple of ways. First of all, they actually have a weapon profile from a rocket pod associated with them, which has a lead or support value that you can use, and that can be used to support any attacks made by the parent unit. So you're essentially buying a very small rocket pod in your unit as well. It's not an aerial unit as such, but it does have the trait, meaning if it's being shot at with weapons that shoot better at aerial units, and I'm thinking things like the Flak Fearling from the Imperium, they would get a bonus against one of these. Also, it can't be targeted unless it's actually within point blank range of the enemy, or if it's being targeted with weapons with the aerial quality. Think things like rocket pods, for instance. Those can knock them out of the skies before they can buff the unit. And how do they buff the unit they are assigned to? Well, they gain +1 defense attribute to every single model in the unit. Defense attributes means it's both increasing your submerged defense value and your air defense value. This is slightly better than other special escorts that we've seen in the past, like the ones for the Empire, the Patriot Automata. What does the Acron give as well? Well, it gives extreme range quality to any aerial weapons in the unit. So a good trick you can do with these Union troops is to equip a bunch of ships with rocket batteries, and then assign an Akron Observer to them, and you will be firing them at extreme range rather than just long range. A few side notes here: the Acron counts as being equipped with any generators present in the unit, so they get those benefits from it. However, these models do not benefit from any of the special rules or weapons for this unit, so that's something they don't get. And if you destroy the parent unit, this unit also gets destroyed, which is a line we did not see with the Cheetah Automata submersibles for the Empire, by the way. Other things that make them special is they have the same contra-rotation rule that we already saw when we were talking about the Empire or deep dive. But what does it do? Well, you can actually declare this in your special operations step, and it means that your drift becomes 0, so you lose any speed advantages because of drift, and your speed attribute itself is reduced by the mass of that ship for the activation. However, this sacrifice in speed results in an up to 90-degree turn anywhere really in your activation during that step, so it gives an unprecedented maneuverability in this fleet compared to all others. And yeah, it's very hard to outmaneuver Union fleets because of this, because they can turn on a dime essentially at the expense of a bit of speed. Now, the very big thing that they have is, first of all, let's start with heavy magazines. We've noticed this already. Your flagships are massively buffed because any heavy gun batteries, regular gun batteries, heavy rocket batteries, or normal rocket batteries can fire up to 3 of those weapons with the lead value instead of the support value, meaning those flagships are really putting out terrifying amounts of firepower. And terrifying amounts of firepower is what you get with this special rule. Give 'em hell. The Union are especially specialized in giving absolutely devastating barrages with 2 types of weapons, namely those with the gunnery, and that's mostly your heavy gun batteries, or fusilade. And when you activate this one, you get a disorder condition at the end of the activation, so it doesn't bother you just yet. But imagine it being firing all guns, just, you know, barrel heat be damned, and if you do, you can actually get the devastating quality for that entire volley. In fact, we've got a bit of footage here of a Union commander showing how it's done to one of our, you know, Imperium gunners.
It's a machine gun! Machine gun!
If that didn't give you a good summary of how this faction plays, I don't know what will. We are taking a look at the battle fleets next, and well, we're taking a look at the special rules that come with their, the generic rules that come with their battle fleets. We have the much known command reroll, your bad luck protection, where if you have a truly atrocious roll, you just pick up all of the dice and re-roll them again. Be wary of using any abilities that already allow you to re-roll dice. A dice can only be re-rolled once, so don't get caught by any weird interactions because of this. The other rule that they have, and it's a very strong one, is Semper Fi, Semper Fortis. If you're using a Valor card, you roll an action die, and should you have that lucky exploding die, for those of you not quite familiar with the dice results, that is that magical 6, you do not discard the card and return it to your hand for a later use. That can be a very strong ability, especially if you get it on some of the more powerful Valor cards in the game. Now, the generic fleet can just take any old flagship as you'd expect, with any old Union ship as you'd expect, but you can't spam any of those units, which is normal for the generic fleets. And you get that Semper Fi rule in there, giving you a bit of a return investment on the Valor cards you're using, so that's good. Also, very nice thing, they've included this bit of artwork for the RC-52 Automata. I'm really looking forward to it. If you're seeing the official artwork, that means the release can't be far off. Now, if we're moving on to the different specialized fleets, the first one we start off with is the Constitution Battle Fleet. It is of course the one that you should be taking a look at if you bought the Constitution fleet set. You have to take one with the Constitution class, that one makes absolute sense, but you also have to include a Yorktown unit, and that's sort of your bread and butter frontline squadron unit for the Union. And then any further 3 units with the Union keyword. You can't include more than 2 of any unit except for Yorktowns or their smallest frigates, I believe, the Farragut class ones. And what do you get out of it? Well, you get all of the advantage that you would get out of the generic fleet, which is great. You're not losing out on anything by selecting this specialized fleet. But the other one that you get is the Constitution does not gain any disorder from Give 'em Hell. Normally, if you use Give 'em Hell, you would take a disorder condition at the end of your activation, and against a couple of factions, mostly the Empire, if they're using lots and lots and lots of alchemical weapons, that can actually be a very good thing. You're not leaving your battleship vulnerable to any more disorder because of this. So it's quite a decent bonus, because when you look at the grand scheme of things, you're just getting that last line as an extra one compared to the generic one, which is never bad. Another one that you can't take yet is an Enterprise battle fleet, as in you can't take it yet, it has not been released yet. You have to take the Super Mass 4 carrier, the Super Dreadnought carrier, and you have to include a Montgomery unit to go with it. Now, the Montgomery unit is a repair ship that can repair the Akron Observers, the little rotors that accompany your ships, or the RC-52 Patriot Automata, which are small little Mass 1 flying units that the Union gains access to. And this is one of the repair ships. It's dirt cheap for what it does, so that's a good thing. You're not being screwed over. However, there is a weird thing about this Enterprise battle fleet. You have to include the Montgomery unit, but in order to unlock the benefits from it, you have to include a maximum sized Farragut or Roanoke unit. The Farragut being the small frigate, and the Roanoke being the size 2, the mass 2 carrier unit. And when you do, the Enterprise does not have their SRS capacity reduced when crippled, which means your flagship will not be launching fewer ships if it gets crippled. We've seen something similar with a few other factions. In this case, it's your flagship that gets protected from having any SRS capacity reduced. It's not a bad bonus by any stretch of the imagination, and when you look at the grand scheme of things, again, you're still keeping your Semper Fi rule and you're still keeping your commandery rule, so you're just getting this as the extra cherry on top. I just think that the requirements to get to it are a bit steep. But then again, if you're taking an Enterprise class ship, you're already investing quite a bit of points into that one, so you just might as well go the whole way and just get one single fully fleshed out Enterprise battle fleet. A new entry is the Tesla battle fleet. You are stuck with one flagship. It's a named one, and it's the USS Mexico. It's a special variant of the Constitution class that we've seen before, and you have to include one of the Tesla units that has been included in this ORBAT, i.e. the Discovery unit. You may include either one of the carrier units, the Roanoke units, provided that they take the White Doves upgrade. So if you want to take one of those regular carriers, you can, but you have to take the special SRS token upgrade that comes with it, just so it's sort of in theme for the Tesla units found in the US Army. And whatever you want to take, you can't just go for any old unit with the Union keyword. You are restricted to those with the Tesla Masterworks trait, which ships that are we'll go over later down the line. Now, the weird thing about it is, I don't think this Tesla battle fleet has been fully fledged out yet. I think this is a placeholder, because you're restricting yourself in many ways with the unit selection, and you're not getting a lick of difference compared to just the old generic Union battle fleet. So yeah, consider this a placeholder at best. And speaking of placeholders, I've been saying quite often that the Honorable Eclipse Company battle fleet, which is a mercenary battle fleet, is available to virtually every ORBAT that we've done a deep dive on so far, but it's not been worked out. It's coming soon. Now, I don't mind that much. I mean, if it's not officially been released yet, but yeah, can't do much of a deep dive on those yet. And yeah, Honorable Eclipse Company is mentioned here with one of the mercenary battle fleets, but if we're brutally honest, the only ones that we've seen that are actually fleshed out by now as Black Wolf mercenaries. We'll get to those when I release the Commonwealth ORBATs, and the Nautilus one that we saw on the deep dive for the Crown ORBAT. The League of Crimson, as far as I know, unless they really changed it last minute, is also one of these, like the Honorable Eclipse Company, that hasn't been fleshed out yet. So yeah, not a lot to say about those. When we are taking a look at the Union outfitting yards, we're taking a look at their special equipment, and we don't really find all that much different when it comes to the generators. For the generators, there's only really one special entry in it. It's the Tesla Houston ARC generator. Now, in some ways, it's similar to the Storm generator we saw with the Imperium, which should not be a surprise. I mean, the technologies are based on Tesla's electro weaponry for the Union, and that one is based off the general Imperium technology as well. Now, what does it do? Well, it provides you with +2 to the model's speed attribute. So it is very similar to an atomic generator, and for that reason alone, I think you would always be no, if it comes with that one, you would never be taking that atomic generator to begin with. This one's just straight up better. It can be used in the shooting phase to attack an initial target within 15 inches of this model, and when it does so, you just roll up 13 action dice. With the arc quality, that means that you are ignoring any type of shield generator found on the targeted ships, and you get the devastating quality on those 13 dice. Now you can't combine it with any other weapon though, so even if you're using this on units that come in 3, you can't just pool all of those dice together for one devastating salvo. However, a model that uses the arc generator to make an attack does gain a level of disorder. And it's not like with the storm generator where you end up being obscured after the attack as well, so it doesn't have that defensive component. It instead has this permanent +2 speed to the model. I think it's a very strong entry though. It's very much an interesting one, these special generators, and the Union has access to a very strong one. If we're looking at the weapon qualities that we can find on the Union, I'm just taking a look at the special weapons, the thing that makes them unique. And the first one that we see is the cruise missile silo. Now, if I'm not mistaken, it's only a single type of cruiser that comes with this one. And looking at the profile, it is a juicy one. I mean, 10 dice as the lead weapon, which is very likely that you'll be using it as lead weapon, with 12 dice at long range, and it doesn't come with any extreme range, which is weird for artillery pieces, but it does standard come with the blast rule, which in and of itself can mean it causes insane devastation. It's an aerial attack, so your opponent does get some aerial defense against it. However, high velocity puts a brake on that, because high velocity means that even if your opponent rolls a double counter, they only count as single counters for this attack. So aerial quality moderately offset by high velocity. The big thing though is they are limited. That means you have a 1 in 6 chance after you fire this weapon that it has just run out of missiles. And there's nothing more painful than rolling that, I think it's on a blank result. I might be blanking on that one myself. But if you roll that result, it's not firing for the rest of your game, and then you're essentially stuck with a very expensive paperweight of a cruiser. So it's a risk. I mean, you are getting something that shoots 12 dice with blast with high velocity. That's worth something, but you know, it's very swingy. It might just be sitting there doing nothing. The other weapons that are special are the dual magnetic Gatling guns, and I'm just going to discuss this along with the dual naval electro cannons, because both can be found on the special RC-52 Patriot Automata, which are these very funky little flying units that we just saw the preview artwork of. Now, when looking at these weapons though, the dual magnetic Gatling guns have got 7 dice as lead weapon, only 2 in support, mind you, but I don't care, they have sustained. And if you compare them to the dual naval electro cannons, they've got 4 as the lead, and they do have 3 dice in support. But that doesn't really matter, because sustained, as a general rule of thumb, means that every dice is about 1.5 times more likely to score a hit compared to non-sustained weaponry. So only having 3, or rather only having 2 in support, almost equals those 3 in support anyway from the dual naval electro cannons, which means you're dueling it out between magnetic as a quality and arc. Arc will ignore any of the shield generators, which is not bad, but magnetic one is a special one. If you can if you do any point of damage with a magnetic weapon, you will cause a navigation lock critical marker on the target in addition to any other effects. The problem is, we've seen what happens to this before with the Union. They used to have the Trident generators that also shot 7 attacks, but the problem was every time you got damaged by one, you would take the navigation lock critical damage marker. And if you take a critical damage marker that you have already had before, you take catastrophic damage. And with the Trident generators, this just led to a grotesque stacking of that same navigation lock over and over and over again, causing weird amounts of damage because of that debuff. And I'm hoping that has been fixed, but I've not read it anywhere. I can see a unit of like 3 of those RC Automata with the rules as they are now being absolutely broken because they have that standard magnetic quality. Unless I'm of course missing something and magnetic has been changed in general. That being said, what other special weapons have they got? It's the heavy electro cannon battery. This one can only be found on one particular ship, part of the Tesla Masterworks series as you go, and it does look like a strong one. It's a one that gets better as you come up close, and they have reasonably high support values, which you would expect, or rather what you previously would have expected if they hadn't nerfed support values as much as before. So this one sort of jumps out as being an interesting entry as well, especially because those also come with the Tesla Houston generators that we've discussed before. And being that they are gunnery, they should stack with the give 'em hell command that we've seen before, so you can virtually add devastating to this as well, along with ignoring any of the shield generators. So again, quite a potent weapon to talk about. And the last one I want to talk about is the rocket pod. Those small little Akron Observers come equipped with those, as I believe the RC-52 Automata do as well. And what are they? Well, they are short range, so only up to closing range, rockets, meaning they have the aerial quality. However, only 3 dice as the lead value, so you'd never want to do that. But still, 2 dice as the support value, which is identical to a rocket battery. So those cheeky little Akron Observers, increasing the range on one of your rocket ship units, well, they can fire almost as well as those smaller rocket batteries. So it's a very good weapon at the end of the day. Next up are the Flagships, and it all starts of course with the Constitution battleship, which is the main battleship from the first fleet that was released for the Union. And when we're taking a look at this ship, it comes with those paddle wheels, so extreme maneuverability is a thing. It also comes with the Give 'em Hell command, so you can gain devastating on all 3 of those heavy gun batteries. And when we're looking at the placement of those heavy gun batteries, they can all fire to the front, meaning it is an incredibly easy ship to pilot. If you want to get the most out of it with the torpedo salvo and all guns being able to fire to the front, it's not a hard ship to pilot, anyone can do it. It also comes standard with its own internal shield generator. Again, shield generators have gotten a bit of a buff because they are directly proportional to the mass of the ship, meaning they will reduce enemy incoming fire with 3 dice. And you can take an Akron Observer rotor for 23 points if you so desire. If you're doing that though, I would replace every single one of those gun batteries with heavy rocket batteries. But you do miss out on that juicy Give 'em Hell bonus, and in its own fleet, the main bonus is mostly to Give 'em Hell, as in they don't get any disorder tokens from it, and it would be a bit of a shame to miss out on those. If you're going to use your Akron Observers, I would do so on rocket cruiser ships rather than on your main Constitution battle fleet, because for 250 points you do want to have it guns blazing with devastating. There's a couple of named variants as well, the first one being the USS Texas. When we're looking at what you get out of this one, there's not that much stat-wise. In fact, there is no difference whatsoever. So what does justify the 275 points, meaning a 25 points increase compared to the other ones? Well, you get focused gunnery. And focused gunnery means if you shoot all of your gunnery attacks against a single initial target, you get +2 to all gunnery action dice pools for that activation. Now, it mostly means that you are going to be firing as a lead weapon 3 individual times at a unit, that you can actually gain a bunch of extra dice. You mustn't forget, heavy magazines only works if for a single attack, but that doesn't matter. If you're shooting at a small unit, you might as well just declare every single one of those heavy gun batteries to be firing at 1 frigate, and you will get a very hefty 11 dice out of it, because the lead value for every individual gun battery will be 9 dice, at ideal range of course, and then +2 for the focused gunnery. So if you want to lay on some punishment against small Mass 1 ships, and I imagine that could be useful if you're facing something like Enlightened. Those Mass 1 ships are no joke. This USS Texas is more geared towards taking those out. And the other thing that you get out of it that you never got out of the normal Constitution battleship is that it is an inspirational ship. Any friendly units may re-roll a single action dice in their activation, which can only be a good thing if you remember to use it. So that's one named variant. The other named variant is the USS Mexico. It's 10 points cheaper than the Texas. However, this one is one of the Tesla masterworks. It comes with 2 of the before mentioned heavy electro cannon batteries, which is a special one. It comes with an internal shield generator, as you would expect, but also comes with one of the gun batteries replaced with a Tesla Houston arc generator, so it comes with that one as well. And it comes with Inductorium, a rule that we saw copy-pasted from the Imperium fleet. If you are shooting any arc weapons, and the Tesla Houston arc generator is one of those, and you roll more crits than there are units in the unit that you're targeting, you get additional dice equal to the number of ships in the unit that you're targeting. So you can get a few extra dice coming out of this one as well. And to compensate for the fact that you don't really get heavy magazines because all of the gun batteries are changed out with heavy electro cannons, you do get heavy Tesla coils to compensate. And from the looks of it, it's just exactly the same as heavy magazines, but you just get the lead values as well from these. And don't forget, that's 10 dice for the ones that you're firing up close and personal. And these are still gunnery weapons, so you can still go and give them hell with these as well. So, yep, I think this is an interesting one as well. You can pay. I would easily pay the extra 15 points to upgrade to the USS Mexico because of all of this. Next up is the Enterprise Heavy Carrier. Now, that model has yet to be released, but I imagine it will also be released in a box set similar to the Ice Maiden or the Victory class that we've seen earlier, meaning they will include some frontline squadrons and some support squadrons. Now, guessing aside, because again that's not sure, what are we getting for the points? Well, first of all, 300 points is super reasonable in terms of points cost. because you're still getting a carrier that has an SRS capacity of 10, which isn't bad, not bad at all, and it still comes with 3 rocket batteries. However, there's something odd about the heavy rocket batteries. You can't align all of them up in the same direction. And in fact, I think this one specifically has as the weakest firing option shooting to starboard. I think this is one of the first ones where it actually makes a difference whether you're shooting to port or starboard, because starboard only allows you to take a single heavy rocket battery to shoot at something, whereas the 2 other ones are shooting at port. Now you can still fire 2 of them in the front though. However, getting all of your juice out of heavy magazines is not possible with this ship, which might explain why it's so reasonably pointed. It can also take an Akron Observer, one of those little drones, and I would do so. I mean, you are shooting heavy rocket batteries as it is, so might as well give them the extreme range for the extra 23 points, bumping the points cost up a bit more of course, but I see no reason why you shouldn't. Also comes with an internal shield generator. Again, very strong, but you will get a max out of 3 dice reduction, despite having mass 4. And something that the Union seems to do, they have launch catapults, meaning they are able to launch their SRS tokens to units within 25 inch rather than the usual 20. It is a bit weird because launch catapults were specifically mentioned in the outfitting yards in the Enlightened ORBAT. They're not here for some reason. Not that it really matters that much, but there was a difference in layout between the 2 of them that I noticed when doing my deep dive study. Other than that, they benefit from getting SRS mine clearance and SRS recon flight, as it was added to most other things in these recent ORBATs. And finally, for the last part of the review, we are taking a look at the meat and potatoes of the fleet, the things you use to fill out your roster. Now, the first entry is a fairly new one. It's the California Supply Cruiser. It's yet to be released, and for a cruiser at 70 points, it's not too expensive. However, the first thing we notice is that it's barely got any weapons. It's only got the broadsides as a weapon, which isn't exactly something to write home about, and you can take in an Akron Observation rotor for 15 points. However, seeing as this unit doesn't even get the option of taking any rocket batteries, to me that's a dead entry. I would never take that one as it is. However, it does come with logistical support, meaning you can add +1 to the number of victory and valor cards in a player's hand, and it comes with some minesweepers. So should your enemy try to block you off with mines, this ship should be able to clear it out for you. They also have a supply depot, meaning any friendly model within 7 inches may remove a single level of disorder at the start of their activation. Not a bad thing, because, you know, you will be stacking up disorder tokens rather quickly because of the give 'em hell command with this faction. But weapons on friendly units lose the limited quality while within 7 inch of this unit. So if you invested in a lot of those missile cruisers that we discussed earlier when we were talking about the weapons, this ship can offset that. So for 70 points, it is very specialized in what it does, but it's not a bad ship. I mean, it does bring you some extra to this fleet, so yeah, well worth considering in my book. Next up is the Defiant Destroyer. Destroyers are in general mass 1 ships, so the first thing I always look at is the Citadel value, and I'm seeing a value here of 10, which isn't the atrocious level of 8 that you find on some destroyers, so that's already a thumbs up in my book. And when you're looking at the points cost, it's 35 points per model. For destroyers, that's fairly reasonable, because you are getting 2 gun batteries out of them in this army. That was very similar to other destroyers like a Sigimir you can find in the Imperium Force, and I do like that one as well. In fact, I would rate this one a fair amount higher, because the Sigimir is one of those destroyers that suffers from only having Citadel 8, and that's a huge difference compared to Citadel 10. If you want to put that in words, Citadel 8 is very likely to be breached with just a single heavy gun battery firing at closing range. Citadel 10 isn't. Your opponent would have to be slightly lucky, or on the luckier end of the scale, to score 10 hits out of a single heavy gun battery, so that's the main difference. And another glorious thing about this one, it gains focused gunnery, which means that if all of your attacks are declared against the single initial target, all of your attack pools get +2 gunnery, extra dice in it. So even if you've got one ship firing, one gun battery has 5 dice as the lead value at closing range, and only 2 as the support weapon. However, if you take a unit of 3 of these ships, for instance, and they are all just shooting at the same cruiser, every one of those salvos is going to take an extra +2 gunnery dice from this rule, meaning suddenly you're shooting 9 dice per destroyer at one of those cruisers. And that's a whole different story, because that means that's the equivalent of a single heavy gun battery shooting at something. So yeah, that is respectable firepower out of the Defiant destroyer. Next up is the Discovery Arc Cruiser. For a cruiser, when you're seeing 135 points, the first thing you go is like, this better be good. And what are we getting for it? Well, we're just getting one heavy weapon, which is the heavy electro cannon battery. Not a bad sort of weapon by any stretch of the imagination. And we're seeing a rocket battery. Now, when we're looking at this, I'm sort of saying like, well, that is not a lot for 135 points. But then you see that it's got the Tesla Houston arc generator, which could be used as that devastating attack, literally with devastating quality, for 13 dice at 15 inch. So this is one of those very aggressive cruisers that you want to get up close and personal with, and when they do, they can very much release devastating amounts of firepower. You are essentially shooting 2 arc weapons, so the Inductorium rule can actually add some extra to it. You can take an Akron Observer, however, seeing as it's not firing any meaningful heavy rocket batteries, I wouldn't take this option for them, let's be honest. They do suffer a bit from their repair rolls though, because they do have experimental design, but they are, more importantly, one of those units with Tesla Masterwork. That battle fleet hasn't been fleshed out yet, as we've discussed earlier, but it might be very important in the near future when that is released. Next up, we're taking at the smallest type of ship available to the Union, which is the Farragut frigate. It comes, that's the frigate type that comes in the Union frontline squadrons, by the way. It just has a single gun battery, but at only 22 points per model, you're not exactly making a massive investment with those. The weird thing about it though is you have to take them per 4, leading to a unit of 88 points. It doesn't get any extra additional firepower. The Akron Observer, again, I think is a bit of a dead entry because you're not getting any extreme range. There's no option to change the gun batteries to missile pods or anything. But it is a fast unit. A linear dash unit, meaning you can gain +2 speed if you're not taking any turns. So if you just want to do a cheeky turn 1 objective grab, these Farragut frigates are something that you could consider. That's the role they play. Now, onto the cruisers again. The Intrapid light cruiser is the smallest option I found, well, one of the smaller options. It uses the one with only a single heavy gun battery to the front, but it has the light battery to the rear. So when you're using this model, you're kind of hoping to shoot from a side profile, so you can use heavy gun battery supported by light well, normal gun battery. And that means you're going to have to do a lot of maneuvering, but the contra-rotation should help a great deal with that. You can change the heavy gun battery with a heavy rocket battery, but I wouldn't recommend it, because you can't then stack that with the small gun battery. And a small gun battery firing on its own, that's worth next to nothing. This means this also isn't a unit suitable for any rocket attacks in my book, and I would not be taking the Akron Observer for it as a consequence. It does, however, get Vanguard as a rule, meaning you will be able to get into that ideal closing range much faster than the other cruisers. So you're only paying 72 points, which is already a very decent investment for something with armor 6 and 8 hull points in total. So yeah, for that reason alone, I can't fault it. It's a durable unit, as durable as you'd expect from many other factions, for 72 points for these defensive stats. It's not bad at all. The other one you get is the Lexington heavy cruiser. The heavy cruiser is the one with the dual heavy gun batteries in the front and the small gun battery at the rear. Again, you're looking at a side firing profile if you're piloting this ship. However, it comes with that juicy little armor 7 value, and it comes with 8 hull points, which isn't a lot more, but it's not distributed symmetrically, meaning you've got 5 hull points in your battle ready stage, which is what you'd like to see ideally. Now for heavy cruisers, they are on the more expensive end of the scale for 127 points, but this one is the give 'em hell option that you really want to take. Now what weapon options have they got? Well, you can replace any heavy gun battery with heavy rocket batteries, but it's the same issue as I've mentioned before, that gun battery can't be changed out for a rocket battery, meaning if you opt for heavy rocket batteries, that gun battery might as well not be there, and it's not the ideal choice as a consequence. Again, one of those units where the Akron Observer rotor is a far from ideal choice, if you ask me, because this one isn't suited for rockets. Doesn't make it a bad entry at all though, I would just take it if you want to go for that route. A reasonably new option is the Montgomery support ship, which is only 55 points. It's going to be made out of the new support squadron sprues coming out soon, I hope, and for 55 points you're looking at a cheap vessel. Now again, much like with the California class, it's not providing much in terms of firepower, so the juicy part has to be somewhere else, and it's about here. It offers advanced repair facilities, meaning you can roll 2 additional dice when other ships are trying to take their repair tests. So this one provides you with a 10-inch bubble of extra efficient repairs, and for that a very reasonable 55 points cost, I think that is a solid deal for a Union player. It can also provide an escort duty for a simple little +2 ADV or SDV for any flagship that you attach it to, and seeing how it actually will keep it in working order, I don't see this as a bad option at all. And another thing that is really strong, but like better than all of the other things, is the field repair platform. Every time an Akron Observer rotor is being shot down, which can happen with any aerial weapons, by the way, they are not super hard to target, or any RC-52 Patriot Automata are destroyed within 10 inch of this unit, you can roll a dice, and if you roll a counter or heavy counter, that thing is not removed and instead remains in play with a single hull point. Especially for the Akron Observers, they are corvettes, so they only have a single hull point to begin with. But for the Patriots as well, if you're going that route, this ship is essentially a no-brainer in my book. So if you plan to play a lot with those fun little rotor flying units, which is a strength of the Union, take this one for sure. Especially when it's getting mine layer. It just gets better and better, doesn't it? It's a super solid entry. It's cheap, and it provides you with so many buffs that, yeah, you'd almost have to be a smooth brain not to take one in your fleet, in my option, in my book. Then again, try it out. The next entry is some of the more esoteric units for the Union, and that is that Patriot Automata that we just discussed that you can repair with the previously mentioned ship. Now, they are 38 points per model, and I've already briefly discussed them when I was talking about the weapons. They originally come with the dual naval electro cannons, and they can take an Akron Observer rotor for plus 20 points, although I find this weird because they only come equipped with rocket pods themselves. But if you want to, squeeze in a cheeky little extra rocket pod, you can. These Patriot Automata don't have any weapons that fire beyond point blank range. Closing range, because rocket pod's maximum range is 50. So you're hoping for a fast unit, and they are. Speed 10 doesn't disappoint. It's a mass 1 ship, flying ship in this case, obviously. However, one of the first values you then want to check is that Citadel, and yeah, wipe the sweat of your eyebrows. These don't have a rubbish Citadel value, so there are no issues with those here. This is the one I find weird though. Any model in the unit may replace its dual naval electro cannons with the magnetic Gatling guns for free. And as I was discussing earlier, I can't see why you would want to take the new dual naval electro cannons over the magnetic Gatling guns for now, especially if that stacking magnetic debuff thing is still alive and kicking, which is something that was promptly nerfed for the Crown, so I'm guessing that's going to happen in the near future as well. They have mechanical soul, meaning they ignore the emergency, which is the second level rather of any disorder tokens, but they count as having the disorder level nonetheless, so it just keeps increasing if you take more of them. And models in this unit can only support assaults with +1 AD to fray. +1 action dice is the abbreviation I assume here. So just swarming your opponent with these Patriot Automata and then thinking you can just get a bunch of +2 assault dice in the fray, that's not going to work. So this unit is not one that goes in for the boarding actions because of this rule. However, what do they do very, very well? Well, they have the sharpshooter unit. And let's not forget, if you're taking the magnetic Gatling guns, you're shooting 7 dice with sustained, and the initial target is going to receive -2 attacks with the gunnery quality by this unit. Now, this is the only rule that makes up slightly for the dual naval electro cannons. The fact that you are reducing the Citadel value against it. But like I've said, if the broken mechanic of the magnetic quality is still up, then even that doesn't compensate for dual naval electro cannons with the sharpshooter rule. So let's just see how this is ruled. And they can go on escort duties for the USS Mexico, I believe, because that's the only flagship that actually has the Tesla keyword, if I'm not mistaken. Next up is the Reliant Monitor. That one is one that only has heavy gun batteries to the front, and gets an extra torpedo salvo both to the front and to the rear. Yeah, good luck using both of those at the same time. That's nearly impossible. However, you can, in this case, swap out the heavy gun battery for a heavy rocket battery for +3 points. And finally, we're starting to get to units where it's interesting to take any of those Akron Observer rotors. Because if you're shooting torpedo salvos, you already have a weapon with extreme range, which is what you'd want. You can then swap that one heavy gun battery, and there are no small gun batteries on these that can't support anyway, when you replace it with a heavy rocket battery. So you're free to do so, to make the heavy gun battery a heavy rocket battery. that bumps it up to essentially 84 points, which is what I would consider is the real cost. Because if you take a unit of 3 of these with the Akron Observers, you are talking about a unit that has extreme range across the board, which is something that the Union Army has a hard time with, because even their cruiser missiles don't have that extreme range keyword. And I think this one, along with the Yorktown, is the best option to select this. But more on this later when we get to the Yorktown. The Roanoke strike carrier is a traditional strike carrier, meaning it has an SRS capacity of 4, which means we just have to check the points so it's not excessive, and it isn't. So, solid option, if you ask me. Comes with a single rocket battery, so you're not going to get too much out of that one, and it comes with an escort duty role for any Union ship, providing another +2 to ADV and SDV. And like I said, I kind of like sending out escort duty ships with flagships, both for the cheeky little increase of the SDV and ADV, but also because there's nothing wrong with using those 4 SRS tokens that it provides in a defensive manner. So why wouldn't you? It doesn't really have to be a defensive manner even, because these also get launch catapults, launching ships at 25-inch rather than the usual 20, which is great. And you still get SRS mine clearance and recon flight. Also, these units can become Tesla Masterworks in some ways by, if you take a single Roanoke support carrier consisting of at least 2 models, so you don't have to go for the full unit, but you do have to get 2 of them. They can be upgraded for an extra 20 points to have the UR-31E piloted Corsair fighter squadron, which just sounds so cool, called the White Doves. I just like the way it sounds, because that name is incredibly reminiscent of the UR-31 Lawbot and the GI bot from Wild West Exodus. So that's just a little geek thing. I like the fact that it's so similar. But what does it do? Well, SRS tokens launched by this unit with this rule have, if any attack run includes 1 or more of these White Doves, you get the arc quality to any of the attack runs they participate in. So, yep, what shield generator in essence. Provided that they are the majority of friendly SRS tokens or special SRS tokens in the attack run though. So you can't just throw in a single one of these and then expect all of the other ones that you're sending in to gain that arc quality. I mean, it's not that bad, you can't spread them out that much. White Dove SRS tokens can only be intercepted if there are no other SRS tokens remaining to make an attack run on the same target. So you probably are going to have to differentiate them somewhat to become White Doves, because these are also the last ones to die when they are being intercepted. It's a solid option in my book. I mean, I would definitely go for it if you're taking 2 of these carriers. Next up is the Valiant Fast Destroyer. Again, Destroyer, Mass 1. First thing to check is the Citadel, and at Citadel 10, you're good, you're still good. These come with rocket batteries instead. So, and they can take an Akron observation rotor, so well worth considering in this case. These are more specialized at shooting at aerial units, because then you get to reroll any of your blanks when you do so. And they come with the same advantage that the Farragut had, for getting an extra +2 speed during the movement step if it takes no turns. With speed 11, I think they even outpace them. So if you're just trying to get some fast objective grabbers, these can work quite as well. They've got the give 'em hell rule, but I think that's mostly academic, because only the light broadsides will be benefiting from those. Yeah, that's not much of a difference. So, yeah. Bit of cool artwork, as you'd expect, of course. The Washington missile cruiser is next up. That's the one that had that special cruise missile silo with the limited rules. It's a unit of 125 points, meaning if that limited kicks in early in the game, like I said, you've got a very expensive paperweight. And it came again, can take an Akron Observation rotor. I think that one said it benefited from aerial weapons, giving them the extreme range. So this is a way to still give the extreme range to these missile cruisers. So they don't have that by default. I've said earlier that you can take that rocket battery / torpedo option in this fleet to provide you with extreme range weapons. This is another one. Take the Washington missile cruisers and slap the Akron Observation on it. Also, it has the warning and control system for the Acrons. Weapons on this unit with the extreme range quality gain the homing quality if the initial target is within 15 inch of an Akron Observation rotor, meaning if you take a unit that has one and you manage to squeeze it up close, you gain homing. And what does homing do? Well, you are re-rolling your blanks. That's advantage number one. But the bigger deal is you can't be obscured against attacks with the homing quality. So good luck if that's your main line of defense against devastating attacks. It's not going to happen with these missile cruisers if you're able to combo with other Akron Observer rotor units. I don't think you're going to want to send this unit in within 15 inch of the enemy, however, because that's when those cruise missile silos are not firing at full effect. They're mostly firing at full effect at long and extreme range. And the big deal as well is they get spotter, meaning you're going to have to take some units that can launch SRS tokens, and for the US Naval Army right now, that is only the Roanoke, so you kind of want to combo that one if you're taking the Washington missile cruisers. So yeah, a solid entry altogether though, because for you do run that risk with the limited rule. However, that one can be offset, as we saw with those supply ships, and you do have to combo it with something providing you with SRS tokens to get the most out of it. But when all of those elements click in a Union army, you can get some monstrously heavy strikes out of these cruisers. So if I don't have a Union fleet myself personally, but it's definitely a build I'd be interested in to test out and just see how it does. And then some of the last units we get are the Yorktown cruisers. They're the sort of bread and butter unit with 2 heavy gun batteries for 105 points. That is a lot, let's not lie about that. For a mid-sized cruiser, 105 points is a lot. However, they've got 2 very interesting builds. The first one is just as a straight up gun machine through Give 'em Hell. You can definitely use them that way. The other option, but they do increase in points value over it, is just to replace 2 of the heavy rocket batteries, which bumps these guys up to 111 points when you do so. But when you do, and you include an Acron Observation rotor for 20 points, you can create a unit that tosses out 6 heavy rocket batteries at extreme range, and that's no joke. I mean, even if you're advancing towards the enemy with this unit with your rotor on it, for instance to use your Washington missile cruiser, you can just have something that is peppering your opponent with firepower from turn 1 that has an incredible board control. And so far in our games against our local player using the Union, these have been, being very effective as well. So yeah, strong entry. And with that strong entry, we come to the end of the ORBAT. I hope you liked this one. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more similar content coming in the future, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And I hope to see you again soon. Bye!